then also the host's personalities. Like, we liked each other. We genuinely got along. There were no egos, beyond what... Well, there were no egos. Hang on. Okay, asterisk.
This week on Influence, what to do when you've been podcasting for 20 years straight. Greetings, Internet travelers. Welcome back to Influence with me, Matt Silverman, the guy whose name's in the title of the show. And I'm here with you for another week. And I got to say, often I bring you one guest, one person with bajillions of followers on various platforms. And, they're a lot of fun to talk to. But today, I got double the bang for your money, okay? 2 guests, and I'm really excited to talk to them. If you are listening to the audio version of this program, as most of you do, everything sounds the same. But if you're listening to the video version, or you're watching the video version, you might see something peeking out in the background. That's right. My daughter, Amelia, she is 12 years old. Some of you may know her from the internets and the YouTubes, because we've done some work there as well. I'm poking at her with my finger, maybe. She's here sitting in on this program. Why don't you hop up here and just say hey in the microphone? She's got to walk all the way up to the mic and say hello.
Hi.
Hello. She's sitting in on the podcast today because it's a very special episode. I have please go sit down. Please. Okay, thank you. It's a very special episode because I have not one, but I have 2 guests, and man, we've been on a tear lately, interviewing folks who have been doing stuff, making stuff on the internet for a long time. We've been talking to first wave, second wave YouTubers for a bit here, and going back through their careers, getting nostalgic about their early videos and their early works. And today's no exception. I told you I have 2 guests, and they have been making this particular project on the internet for 20 years. In a couple weeks now, they will be crossing their 20-year threshold. We're going to drill down into exactly what that means in a moment, because maybe they started 20 years or maybe they joined at some point. We're going to get the exact chronology. But as you know, fandom is the lifeblood of the internet. We cover it here a lot. It's a huge part of this show. And 20 years of Harry Potter fandom on the internet. My guests today have been podcasting about it. That's right. I could count on one hand the things that are 20 years old on the internet. Google, Wikipedia, Craigslist, things like that. Podcasts, they don't last that long, except for this one. I'm talking, of course, about MuggleCast, which is the premier destination for discussion, critical analysis, literary analysis of Harry Potter and the Wizarding World fandom. And I am thrilled to welcome 2 of its 4 hosts to the show today. Please welcome Eric and Micah to Influence. Hello.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having us.
How's it going?
We have a live studio audience.
Yeah, this is great.
They're all here. Nice to meet you both.
Hello, everybody. Yay.
Nice to meet you.
For audio listeners, why don't you just say hey and identify who is speaking, whose voice is whose, and then we'll take it from there.
Oh, yes. The try as I might, the one of us without the low, sexy baritone voice is me, Eric, and I'm joined by
the low, sexy baritone voice, which is Micah.
Fantastic. It's very nice to meet you both. And before we get into the interview, please state your Hogwarts houses and what is your official designation?
Mm. Well, for me, I am Ravenclaw.
Okay.
I was, when I did the official Pottermore quiz, a hat stall between Ravenclaw and Slytherin.
A hat stall. This is the Sorting Hat, not knowing which way to go.
Having a rough day, maybe a little indecisive. And I opted to go with the house where I felt most natural, which is Ravenclaw. But every once in a while, I'm picking up on some Slytherin tendencies. So how about you, Eric?
Well, as you know, Micah, but maybe not everyone listening, I, for many years, would run around major cities in Gryffindor robes, but I am a ex-Gryffindor.
Whoa,
it's true.
Is this an exclusive? I'm sure your listeners know this already.
No. It's old news at this point, but
okay.
But still a fun sort of story, fun to remember. I feel like Gryffindor was the natural window into Harry Potter. Is like, what if you're going to be, if you're not sure, if you haven't thought about it, I'm a Gryffindor. Harry, Ron, and Hermione are Gryffindors. They have different enough personalities. Gryffindor by default. Gryffindor is what society put on me. And as the years went along, I began to feel a kinship with Hufflepuff, actually. And as a matter of fact, it was the Pottermore sorting quiz that really kicked me into gear. And the welcome letter upon being sorted into Hufflepuff. Initially, I was, intake of breath, not sure if I was ever going to be going on that website ever again. But I was reminded, or rather reintroduced to the house that values friendship, loyalty, hard work. And it turns out that my values greatly align with Hufflepuff. So
great.
I had mellowed enough versus my teen years.
If we are children attending school, then we are in a house. But as we age, our perceptions and values might evolve. And would that change our houses as we get older? I've never thought about it that way. Very interesting.
Yeah. So I am a Hufflepuff now.
Great. Micah, you look like you're about to chime in here. Please do.
No, it's interesting because we've seen over the years houses change for some of our hosts, Eric being one of them, Andrew being another, I think was very much a proud Gryffindor early on and now very distinctly aligns himself with Slytherin. It's really only been myself and Laura who have stayed consistent with Ravenclaw. We don't have any Gryffindors now on the panel.
Oh, yeah.
Which is fine. They get too much publicity as it is.
That's fair. 4 hosts, but only, not 4 houses. We gotta work on that. All right. So my first question, which I ask most of my guests, is when you meet regular folks at a coffee shop or maybe members of your family who are not extremely online people, and they say, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" Podcasting is understood at this time, but do people have a grasp? Do regular people have a grasp on what you are doing in your career?
I think that now they definitely do. When we were first creating this podcast, the very early days of the show, when you would say to people that you do a Harry Potter podcast, or even for me at times, I was a little hesitant to bring it up. I remember being somebody who works in the sports industry, and I mentioned that I was doing this podcast at the organization I was with at the time. And they said to me, I think I might have been interning, and the person who I was going to speak with was reviewing my resume. And he's like, "Oh, come into my office and bring Hermione with you." And what I love about Harry Potter, though, is it reveals how there are fans just across so many different demographics. And nowadays, when I talk about the podcast at work, so many of these people have grown up loving the Harry Potter series that they can't wait to go and download an episode. And the dynamic has really shifted over time. So I think there's a much better appreciation for what we do now than what we were doing 15, 20 years ago.
Yep, absolutely. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, podcasts are definitely recognizable now. I mean, that we were one of the earliest podcasts out there. The medium didn't exist prior to this century, and the iPod didn't exist prior to this. Like, the ways in which the internet and technology all culminated in people being able to make and receive and download podcasts itself is like fairly new. But yeah, certainly when I was first telling people about MuggleCast, it started, I joined the show early on. I was 17, and I was still in high school. And yeah, I think I was the only kid at my high school with a podcast. And so having to explain what it is, and also like people didn't really talk to me anyway. I was like an outcast at school, so I didn't really have to tell many people. But family, if I were like, hey, I got this thing, or I work for a website, because it all started through MuggleNet.com. Like,
yes.
I would have to tell that one aunt who would say, you work for a website? Mm-hmm. Do you make money? Do you get paid? Mm-hmm. Like this idea of, no, it was all free labor, and we were being exploited. But we were very passionate. Certainly. We were very passionate, and it was something that there was a barrier. There was a knowledge gap that we would just, I think, cheerfully plug, because we were so excited to be making this thing that people were listening to, that it was never troublesome to explain. And nowadays everyone gets it.
Yes. That's an arc that I hear a lot, with good reason. Before we get into the show itself, what are your personal entry points into the franchise? How old were you? And I'm sure you've discussed this on your show, but like, what does it mean to you when you got started with Harry Potter or Wizarding World?
Mike, I want to hear your story.
Well, for me, I got into Harry Potter a little bit later on, I think, than most people. It was post-college, and the first episode of MuggleCast had been released. And I think it was actually that summer I had a friend who had given me the books. And at the time, only up until the 5th book had been released. This was the summer of Half-Blood Prince coming out. And she had said to me, I really think you'll enjoy reading this series. And, just one book after the other, after the other, after the other. And I came across MuggleNet, which Eric mentioned earlier. And there was this really great section of the website at the time called the editorial section. And there were people from all over the world who were contributing all their thoughts and their theories about what was going to happen at the time in the 6th book. And then, of course, beyond that. And that was kind of my entry point to Harry Potter, and getting to see the fan community and just how invested they were in the source material, and how they could come up with all these different ideas about what was to come.
Yeah.
And then not long after, the first episode of MuggleCast was released, and I had done a little bit of radio when I was in college. And so I listened to this, and I decided I'm going to provide a little bit of feedback, not anticipating anything really to come of it, because of course, I'm sure they were getting tons of feedback at the time and tons of email. And it was just one of those situations where one thing led to the next, led to the next, led to the next. And before I knew it, I was doing news updates on the podcast, probably about 6 or 7 episodes into it, and then ended up becoming a full-time host. And that was my entry point into the series. And 20 years later, here we are.
You're encountering the books and the fandom at the same time, which is fascinating. And you're saying, oh, they probably got a lot of email. Like MuggleNet was already huge, but we'll get into this. Podcasts really were not a thing yet. And you, I assume, went to a website.com and downloaded an MP3 file and then loaded it with a cable onto, or if not, just played it at your computer. I don't know that there were lots of people listening yet when you emailed and said, hey, you should do this.
I think you forgot the part where you had to dial up too.
Oh, well, all right. Hang on.
Yeah.
This is, okay. Well, 2005?
Well,
are we on broadband yet?
There were some people on faster internet, DSL, etc. But man, still, anytime we had to download like the Goblet of Fire movie phone trailers, it took forever for 2.5 minutes of video. So it was still young. I'm still claiming the diet. Maybe my family was late to adopt faster internet. But
to the point about bandwidth, though, and you're mentioning trailers used to crash our site regularly.
Yep. Meaning a movie trailer would come out and people would be so excited to watch it that your site would go down because of the traffic.
And in order to get it, they would download it like that. If the video is, and it's greatly compressed down to, I don't know, maybe 5 megabytes. It's like really compressed. That's every time someone clicks on it, that's that amount of bandwidth is being pulled from the server. And
this
so we
is,
were
for
constantly
context, for listeners, 2005 is when YouTube begins. It is not really a thing yet. So when you say trailers, how are you putting
we probably hosted them.
We had to host them. Yeah, they're on our server. They're on, they would be on the server of the website that was hosting them. And so we were constantly having to upgrade the bandwidth allotment from the server because, it's pay X amount of money to handle it. Because the web traffic on MuggleNet on a good day was huge, insane. But then when it's on a trailer drop day. So anyway, getting back to just the different
Eric,
era.
What was your entry point for Harry Potter? And then I'm very excited to talk about 2005 internet.
Yeah. Well, my entry point to Harry Potter was there's like a longer version of this story, but the short version is I saw the movie. I went with a friend who was a big Harry Potter fan. I had somehow managed to avoid actually reading the books. I tried a little bit with the fourth book, didn't work out because I didn't know what was going on. And when I saw the first movie, something hit me. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually amazing. And this is like what a fantasy world I would like to escape into. And so MuggleNet seems like a place I should have found on my own because I was massively online as a teen. But actually a friend of mine who lent me, I think the third book, I was reading books from friends, which echoes Micah's story too. Like just having a friend who says, I think you might like this, and then loaning you the book is just such a great, wonderful thing that I hope, continues, whether it's Harry Potter or anything in the future. But getting those books, a friend of mine pointed out to me MuggleNet and actually put my name in the ring to be the fan of the week because of how like passionate he thought I was. Through that, I met the webmaster of MuggleNet, Emerson, who was doing like these Potter profiles, fan interviews kind of things. And that was how I got started.
And just briefly, Eric, what year? Because the Sorcerer's Stone movie comes out in 2001?
2001, yeah. I joined MuggleNet right in November of 2002.
2002, got it.
Yeah, so between the time of the first movie coming out and the second movie coming out, I typed the first 3 Harry Potter books into my computer because I wanted a digital version that I could issue a find command because there was so much going on in these books, and I knew that there were clues.
You typed every word. Wow.
Yeah. I didn't know about ebooks at the time, so
I
sat
no one
with the book
did,
on my
and
lap.
they weren't really accessible. Yeah, okay.
Right. They weren't on iTunes.
One other thing that Eric and I do have in common is I did see the movies, at least what was out at the time, before reading the books. So that was also an entry point for me. Was I was really introduced to Harry Potter through the movies.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're saying 20 years from 2005, but Eric, you are participating in MuggleNet in 2002. So you're meeting the webmaster, you're participating as a fan, but at what point are you starting to, what are you doing? What is your role? Are you a moderator? Are you, what's going on?
I had done I'd run a few sections. There's sort of probably a joke among MuggleNet staffers that we're all at some point in charge of name origins, a segment which Micah crushed for many years later on. But there were some live events. The Book 5 release party in Chicago, which is, again, a long story, but why I'm in Chicago to this day. It was my first time going there. I fell in love with the city and such good memories.
Wow. Okay, so you're not from there, but you've been there ever since. Wow.
Grew up in Pennsylvania.
All right.
To be honest, but no, there were a few live events that like I was part of and emceeing and arranging like costume contests and other stuff like that. So that was sort of my first like public speaking sort of thing, and I started doing like high school theater and stuff like that. But it just seemed like a natural when the podcast was getting started. It seemed natural to bring me on, so I joined in episode 3. But the experience of just working on the website, the main segment I worked on was the caption contest, which is it's still like MuggleNet's most fan interactive segment that we've ever had, and a home to humor. a home to just genuinely funny stuff, basically using still frames from the films. And God, it's run for almost 500 weeks overall.
Yeah. I mean, this is the time on the internet where it's like, oh, lots of people are funny, not just the people on television.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, there's so many funny people out there.
There would be weeks where 40 or 50 separate people would win the caption contest, and this is the New Yorker could never, right? You know, they could never. Yeah. When you're paying money per page to print this, that you could never ever do it. But online on MuggleNet, we had all the space we could want. Again, we just keep footing that bill for the higher bandwidth. Let's keep going. But no, it was amazing because here's the incentive. You know, when I told people, again, that ant, what do you do for the website? Oh, I run the caption contest. Ooh, a contest. Do people win anything? Because people are thinking they're still going to get like a signed movie poster in the mail.
Yeah.
Here's the prize, and here's the entire incentive to the caption contest. You get your funny caption posted on MuggleNet along with your first name that says you're a funny guy. And that's it. That's it. But you're part of the laugh. You're part of the joy. You're part of the humor. And that is all that, even like me at that age, that's all I ever would have wanted, you know, to share in the community and the humor and stuff. So I'd say early on I had like a predilection or an interest for cultivating that kind of like fan interactivity on something like, you know, something that I was passionate about, like Harry Potter.
Yep. Yeah. So whose idea was the podcast? And it was originally affiliated with MuggleNet, obviously, but then is it still, or has it broken away? I'm not sure the relationship these days.
Yeah, it's an independent podcast now, and has been for probably since like 2013 era, but it's definitely started off as MuggleNet's podcast. Like you said, Matt, nobody knew, or there weren't places to go for podcasts, or you would never find a podcast organically in the wild. The podcasts that existed prior to August 2005 were, you'd have to go to the website, like figure out what an RSS feed is, first of all, somehow subscribe to it without a catcher, without a directory to do that, somehow figure out the embedded like metadata of the MP3 thing, save it to your computer, and then via a cable download it to the thing. It just wasn't a thing. The iTunes directory that launched in 2005 made that possible for everybody, made it more accessible.
Okay. So just for the chronology for listeners and for myself, the iPod is released in 2001. RSS is a technology that has been in use, but iTunes as a way to disseminate RSS finally hits in 2005, which is exactly when. Wait, so here's my next question. Do you launch MuggleCast in response to iTunes, or is that just a coincidence? You know what I mean?
So iTunes, I'm looking up because I didn't want to get this wrong. Although iTunes existed sooner, the music store where you could buy and download music was middle of the year in 2003.
2003.
But again, so
music is music.
The answer to your second question is yes. Podcasting is new. And somebody on the MuggleNet staff forums, I actually was just looking at her name the other day, suggested, hey, there's this thing called podcasts. And I think MuggleNet, you know, being the web's leading Harry Potter fan site, should start a podcast. And within a few months,
whoever this is the smartest person on the earth.
Yeah.
You think we would remember her name? It's really,
I'm gonna find her name.
And I don't think she's ever been on the podcast.
No,
to be
she's
honest
never.
with you.
Well, I think we had her on like episode 7 or something. But it's. I can look it up. But
that is a level of foresight that is magical. Anyway,
but we owe her everything. I mean, you know, it's a lot of hard work from Andrew and all the people that, you know, put these things together. But when I say we owe her everything is we happen to, unbeknownst to us, the second largest Harry Potter fan site in the world was also planning a podcast around the same time, and we beat them to it.
What we are unpacking here is that this was right place, right time. And 20 years of hard work after, but like you hit at the exact moment. and here we are.
Right. And what is so cool, what you're talking about too, is at a time where iPods were available, but we get so many stories from people who tell us because, iPods may have been cost prohibitive in a way.
Right.
They were literally downloading shows, burning them onto CDs and listening to them in Discman or putting them in CD drives in their car.
Yeah.
And so there's so many different ways that people would listen to podcasts back then because, I think we're a little bit spoiled right now in the fact we can just open up our iPhone, the podcast app, and download any podcast we want to. But back then, that just wasn't a possibility at all. And we still hear from people to this day who were listeners of ours 20 years ago. That's how they would listen to MuggleCast. That's how they would listen to their other favorite podcasts.
I love this. And they probably listened to each episode a few times because what a pain in the butt. And so you've got a CD in your car and you've got nothing else to listen to. Okay, I'll play it again. It's just like podcasts are so disposable these days compared to that user behavior.
And there's so much more available because you can literally get a podcast on any topic. Yes. So to your point, you don't like what you're listening to, you can go find something else in a matter of seconds. And I think one of the fun moments that we look back on in terms of the early adoption of podcasting is the fact that Steve Jobs mentioned MuggleCast not directly mentioned MuggleCast, but did say that, there's even podcasts on Harry Potter. This was during one of his, keynote speeches that he did.
And on the screen, this is on YouTube. On the screen, when he pulled it up, it's Harry Potter podcast, and here's MuggleCast, Andrew Sims, Ben, Kevin, all the names.
Because you're the only one, and hey, what's a touch point that would get regular people excited about the concept of this far and weird, it's radio, but it's on your iPod. What is this? Oh, it's about Harry Potter. Great.
Yeah. So the keynote was to celebrate the ebooks going on iTunes, I think. But the iTunes store had that UI now where if you just searched Harry Potter, you could click the category of audiobook, music, podcasts, and that was
okay. We're off to the races. Okay. So let's talk about the show itself. So Micah, you're entering, a couple episodes in. Eric, you're saying episode 3 because you're already at MuggleNet. So, within the first 10 to 20 episodes, what is the format of the show? What are you talking about? And you're making me realize that not all the books and movies are out yet.
That's right.
The story is not complete. So you're anticipating it's new. Everything's news because you're waiting for the next thing to happen.
MuggleCast
started really put that together.
MuggleCast started out as a news podcast. Let's just read the news because here's the thing: is like there aren't many podcasts out there, and so the idea of format and all this other stuff is like not something we can like conceive of with a lot of knowledge as to what else is going on out there. They're the types of podcasts you would see are like This Week in Tech, which is exactly that, This Week in Tech, and the hosts have personality, but it's focused around the comings and goings and what's going on. Mm-hmm. And Harry Potter at that era, any week in Harry Potter fandom history, there were 40 news items, like separate individual news items, because not only were not all the books out, but the movies were being made. We were getting casting information maybe we're looking ahead to the 7th book, but we're getting casting updates for the 4th movie. Like it's an ebb and a flow that really didn't abate for many years. The last movie ending still did not abate that like constant news cycle. So as a Harry Potter fan,
very interesting. And you're sort of coming back around with the HBO show coming up and now some video games. I mean, it's not as intense, but there's more to explore here.
It was electric. It was an absolutely electric time to. So that's how the first episode started. And Micah saw a need as well. He became our news anchor in New York from the MuggleCast News Center. Because and he was able to inject such humor into these news segments that would come at the start of the show. And I remember just so many funny jokes you made. But
that's my question for you, Micah. Is it very, are you coming in with a script and you're like reading, or is it more conversational banter? Or what was that like?
So initially it was scripted. So I would pre-record it, and then whoever was editing it would insert it into the show. But one of the things that I think a lot of the co-host thought would be better is if the news was actually being read live. And so that allowed for me to not only come on the show to do the news, but at times become a regular co-host. And back then, I think it's also important to note that we had 7, very appropriate, regular co-hosts. So it didn't make sense for all 7 of us to be on every episode. It just become way too much. And I think it's not a great listener experience.
We tried.
I'm sure there are episodes where we were all on, but I just think from a listener perspective too, like, of course, hindsight's 2020, right? We can look back on it and say that, but you know, it's tough for people to try and distinguish between 7 different voices. Jamie, who was our resident Brit, okay, fine, you're going to know who he is, right? Laura, you know who she is, but outside of that, you know, you have to distinguish between everybody else's voices. And so it went from being scripted to just being a natural part of the show. And then we would discuss afterwards a lot of the news, like Eric was saying. And you know, we did have to start to evolve the show though, as well, and incorporate, you know, fun segments, things that we could engage with listeners. A huge portion of our show was listener feedback, right? Especially with not all the books being out. There's so many theories that were out there about how the series was ultimately going to end. And getting that listener feedback, getting voicemails. We played a lot of voicemails on the show over the years. And then, you know, we really got heavy into what was going to happen in book 7 as we approached episode 100.
Right. So it's evolving in real time. It's listener voicemails and feedback. It's news. It's theory crafting and such. When does it evolve into like literary criticism, which is you know, and these days you many of the episodes you're going chapter by chapter discussing characters, themes, you know.
Yeah.
Where does that take shape?
The first chapter by chapter episode was episode 32 of MuggleCast.
Oh, wow. So that's very early.
Before that, we had done a few episodes that were dedicated to characters.
Okay.
Again, kind of looking ahead to book 7, but also being like, here's everything we know about Ron. The major characters, I would say, you know, it wasn't until the later years we're scraping like Daedalus Diggle, you know, but it was more interesting than everyone remembers. But yeah, the big character episodes gave way to. So in terms of literary criticism, it's interesting because there are actually elements much sooner than that. The emails and voicemails we were getting, like 80% of them were about Horcruxes. And like obviously, right now
because it's the big
sense.
Mystery, right?
The biggest mystery coming out of book 6 is what's a Horcrux, what's not a Horcrux. Is Harry a Horcrux? You know, everything to do with that. In fact, it was so many emails that even like 5 or 7 episodes in, we were like, okay, we want to keep taking your voicemails, but no more questions about Horcruxes. But so it became literary criticism because we were analyzing and picking apart and questioning and holding it up, like, you know, again, like what's the word, just putting it through its paces. Because we didn't know, we had to analyze that mystery and like really see what worked both for us personally and if we could convince each other of our point. Oh my God, it was a happy day.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. I mean, this is what fandom is.
Yeah.
Through and through.
Yeah. So I think what really allowed the show to grow and change is the massive amount of content that was happening. So everything was fresh, but then also the hosts' personalities. Like we liked each other. You know, we genuinely got along. There were no egos. You know, beyond what. Well, there were no egos. Hang on. Okay, asterisk. Welcome to the footnote. There were no egos beyond what could be expected from 15 to 19-year-old adolescent boys who were suddenly very much listened to members of the Harry Potter, mostly ladies fandom.
Right. I can't believe how young you were. I mean, who is in charge of this? You are just children running amok. Who do you answer to? There's a boss at MuggleNet, or what's going on there?
What would you say?
Eric mentioned earlier that Emerson was the webmaster of MuggleNet.com, but the podcast really was its own entity. Even though it was MuggleNet's official podcast for a long period of time, the podcast really operated independent of the site. And so we really, at the end of the day, answered to ourselves. Like, this was our creation collectively, and we all took respective ownership of it.
Right.
I think the one thing that reined us in is having those references and people we looked up to. Like I mentioned before, This Week in Tech, but Leo Laporte is a huge icon of Andrews and a personal
He's
role model.
He's been going 20 years probably. When did Twit start?
Early
2000s, something like that. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
You are operating in parallel to what he has been doing for so long. So I do find that interesting.
Yeah, but it's so because of the host's interest in radio and in other formats, like, it's not like we decided to model our show after Howard Stern. We were modeling our show after those like very honest and shows with journalistic integrity and shows. Right. So, yes, we would go off the rails all the time, but it was absolutely, we were being guided by, I think, the good nature of the shows that existed in this space that, we looked up to, or we always wanted to do a show or be part of a show that was interesting and didn't, get off track, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a commitment to, I'm going to say excellence, just in terms of a commitment to excellence. Not, those early episodes are kind of rough, but we were all very passionate.
Yeah. So you're growing up with the show as you're making it, you're going to college and all this, and you keep it going. But then, as I understand, and you alluded to it, like in 2013, it came to a conclusion of some sort and then got rebooted. What exactly happened there? Was it the end of the... Oh, Fantastic Beasts. Yes.
Yeah, so eventually, I mentioned it took a long time for the news to dry up. And it turns out that long amount of time is, around that era. I'm looking for the exact date, but
okay.
Yeah.
Meaning the books are out, the movies are out, all the fan theories are concluded, and everyone is still enjoying, but there's nothing more to talk about.
We had finished the first run of chapter by chapters, which I think we can credit with sort of prolonging the show, because there's 7 books and, essentially dedicating an episode to each chapter of the books. That was when we had finished probably around episode 230. And then in the 260s is when we were wrapping it up and saying, okay, this is, we will never say never to returning, but there's nothing going on. And we had covered Pottermore. Yeah. We had covered a number of surprising updates to the Harry Potter fandom, but really felt like, especially for a weekly podcast or even a monthly one, like this is it. And within two weeks, I think, of us saying goodbye, it was announced that there was a new movie series coming out called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Okay.
And a Harry Potter stage play coming to New York called The Cursed Child.
Yes.
And so, August of 2013. So by our 8th birthday, and now we're turning 20. But by our 8th birthday, we said, okay, that's it.
What was the audience response? You are. It's not like you're saying, oh, maybe we'll see what happens. You are saying we're done. And then you must be getting emails and letters saying, come on.
There's a clip show. I think, people sending in voicemails going, go and stop, or, you guys mean so much to us. And, there's, we have had no shortage of really, really, really exceptionally nice things that people have said to us the whole time. I think there was an understanding, if I'm remembering correctly. And, this is all captured in transcripts and stuff, but there was an understanding that, again, we weren't saying no for good, but that was it as far as news. Like, there was nothing else to talk. We'd covered, I think, all the interesting, tricky topics that we wanted to talk about, and there was just a bunch of goodwill from us to the series and the creator, and going, hey, this is a good place to leave it for now, and we'll see it for like a yearly update or something. But then when the news happened, it was okay. We know these two huge things that we're absolutely going to be podcasting about for years to come are coming, but they're still 2 years away. Right. So the movie was announced long before filming started, long before filming wrapped, production wrapped, and it aired. Even the first screenings were years away. And so when we decided to come back, it was to do monthly episodes, and it was monthly for a couple of years because we knew there was enough content to like keep going, but the momentum was still very low that we have eventually built up again to getting back.
Because if you disappear from the internet, there is always that fear that people will move on and forget. But if you are checking in every so often, you can keep that audience.
I will say the way the audience happened is interesting because, or the way that it changed, because people have walked away. Like, people have the downloads in those early days. If we could just touch that again. Because
I think what you need to say is if we could monetize that.
Because
that's a whole other part of this conversation too. As we now move, in May of 2013, Patreon is introduced, and I know Eric, you were talking about us being a monthly podcast at the time, but we had set a milestone goal, which I don't think Patreon actually even offers these goals anymore.
Right.
But if we reached this certain threshold, we would return to doing weekly episodes, and we hit that milestone. And so now we're in a situation where, talk about needing to find things to talk about. We've made this commitment to returning to weekly episodes of MuggleCast. And now, as we're sitting here in 2025, it's become a business, and not that it wasn't before, but now all the tools are in place for us to make this into a side hustle for many of us. For some of us, a steady source of income. And that's a real part to all of this. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't mention it, right? The fact that, the real reason at the end of the day, yes, of course, we love the Harry Potter series, but that we're doing this so consistently is because there is a financial component to it.
Right.
There's a great point too, because when you're a kid, you give hundreds of hours and you don't realize that your time has value. And you don't really, because you never think you're doing what you love. There's that saying, right? If you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. What a cheap way to exploit child labor, if there ever was one, or labor out of anybody. The 2025 newsflash update is, if you're doing something you're passionate about and it's making money for someone else, you deserve a cut. That's the new nonsense. So
correct.
The point is, there had been enough growing, I think, on our ends, that as we were in the workforce and starting careers and doing all this other stuff, it became difficult to justify the time commitment. That working on, a podcast, something like a weekly podcast admits, because it's hours, as you know, it's not just the recording, it's the post, it's any number of community efforts, outreach, etc. And Patreon was such an elegant solution because it proved to us that there were people out there that wanted MuggleCast to exist. Right. And essentially, wrapping our existence around something like being listener supported on Patreon solved so many problems from the get-go. And we were able to then justify, in adult terms, spending so much time on something that we had done as kids, as younger people. Now we could come back to as adults and also be involved in a business, in that way.
I've said it a handful of times, probably on this show, like Kickstarter and Patreon saved the creative class on the internet.
I think that's right.
And I'm observing, again, you launch a podcast right as podcasting starts to become a thing, and you turn the podcast into a business at the exact moment when that is a viable endeavor thanks to Patreon. Like the timing, and you are growing up yourselves throughout the process, much as Ron, Harry, and Hermione do throughout the course of the narrative of the story. As Amelia is a super fan, and I never was, watching the movies together as a family. She's still awake back there, hopefully. I'm like, oh, right. Life was easy because everything's great when you're a kid, and then growing up is really hard. And by the way, you're fighting a psycho, fascist, evil wizard because that's also hard. The story, as you guys know, is about growing up. So just many parallels here in the fandom, in your lives, in the maturation of the internet as a place for content creators is really interesting, really fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree, for sure.
All right. We should take a break, but before we do, listeners know that I have to do my court-mandated trivia segment where I attempt to stump my guests with a multiple-choice trivia question, and the stakes could not be higher. Amelia and I were talking about it over dinner, and I said, if you get this question right, I will fly you both to the Wizarding World in Orlando, Universal Studios. What did we say? 6 days, 7 nights? Yes.
Oh.
If you get it wrong, you have to devote the next year of the show, MuggleCast, exclusively to Fantastic Beasts, the worst part of the Harry Potter franchise.
You mean the sequels to Fantastic Beasts, right? Because I can make the case for the original Fantastic Beasts being...
Okay. No, as long as you're within the Beasts zone, yes. But you cannot go back to the other books.
Micah, what do you think? I don't think that we should say yes to this. Wait, do we get to say? Do we get to choose whether
you can
the
define.
6 days, 7 nights sounds awesome? But
in fairness, you run Quizzitch, our weekly trivia segment on MuggleCast. There's no excuses for you not getting.
I'm still going to be leaning on you.
Okay, well, here's the thing. If this informs your decision, I was like, I gotta get some Harry Potter trivia, but you're gonna know. You're analyzing Eric typed the text into the internet word for word. Like, there's no way. Exactly.
There's no way I can stump you. Is this a question from the first 3 books? Because those I've memorized. Literally, the words flowing through your brain as you type them out, you memorize them like nobody's business.
I believe that. So so this trivia is tangentially related to Harry Potter. It is not.
You said it's multiple choice?
It is multiple choice.
All right, we've dawdled enough. I've gotten as much courage as I think I can. Micah,
they're
help
ready.
me.
They're committing to the stakes. We're talking about witchcraft and wizardry, and today's trivia.
Can I just say, I think
Please.
you should take Amelia to the Wizarding World, regardless of whether or not we get this correct.
She's doing a dance in the background. We priced it out one time, and I think we could go to like Europe for a month for the cost it would take. To go to Disney World or Universal.
And is that factoring in the multi-park pass?
Right. but yes, one day we will get there, and we will figure that out. For now, our trivia is about witchcraft, specifically the Malleus Maleficarum, an incredibly popular treatise on witchcraft published in 1487. This was written by Heinrich Kramer, a German inquisitor who was not good. Not a good guy. He was a big fan of torturing women to get them to confess to witchcraft. One historian who chronicles Kramer describes him as a superstitious psychopath. All right? The Malleus Maleficarum, I think, if we're saying that in Latin, translates to the hammer of witches, and it laid the groundwork in the 15th century for a lot of demonology and sorcery. And then as the printing press came about in Europe, this kicked off a lot of the witch trials in the 16th and 17th century. So we have this guy, Kramer, to thank for all this bad stuff that happened around witchcraft. The question today is, in the Hammer of Witches, the superstitious psychopath lays out 3 elements necessary for witchcraft. I will read you 4 elements. 3 of these are presented in the treatise. 1 of them I made up. Which of these is not required for witchcraft, according to the notorious inquisitor Heinrich
Kramer. Are you prepared?
I'd say this is cool. This is cool. I like the question.
All right, great. A, the evil intentions of the witch. Or is it B, the help of the devil? Or is it C, the permission of God? Or is it D, the touch of a demon? So again, 3 of these are the recipe. Kramer says a witch will possess 3 of these need to happen in order for witchcraft to exist. One of them I made up. You're looking for the fake one. I can give you them again if you need to, but please discuss.
Micah, what are your thoughts?
Well, my natural inclination is anything related to God. I don't feel like witches would even care about.
Well,
certainly not permission.
I think in a religious religious like society though, everything goes back to God. So witches don't exist without God's permission because creation doesn't exist without God's permission because nothing exists without God's permission. And so you could see somebody, just as Lucifer had fallen, you could see God technically permitting witches, and saying that would then permit people like this guy, I want to say, I keep picturing the Witchfinder General played by Alan Cumming in the Doctor Who episode about it, which is excellent, by the way.
Okay.
He does Psycho, but he does really funny Psycho. Witchfinder.
Yes, I can see that for Cumming, yeah.
I think it's called The
sure.
Witchfinder. You got to listen to it. It's the Doctor Who episode with Jodie Whittaker. Anyway.
Okay.
So I can see somebody like that guy saying God permits it because God permits us to then, he empowers us to find and kill these witches and do his holy work. So the God part I'm okay with. The question I have is the 2 that center around the devil, because there's devil and then there's demon.
Right.
And my initial inkling was to go with number 1, the evil intentions of the witch, being neither here nor there, because this is more about deities and that. But now I'm thinking, no, they really hated women. So they probably would blame the witch for a part in becoming a witch. And a witch is somebody who is married to the devil, in some interpretations of what it is that happens. So can we have the demon and devil ones again?
Absolutely. Choice B is the help of the devil. Choice D is the touch of a demon.
Okay. I think what maybe sounds slightly more likely to happen is, the way it would be worded is more the touch versus the help of the devil, especially if we're also talking the permission of God. So I'm inclined to guess, and Micah, please tell me your thoughts here. I'm inclined to say the one that does not belong, and I could be way off, is the help of the devil, was it?
Okay, the help of the devil, yes.
Help of the devil. So we're keeping the touch of a demon, permission of God, and the evil intentions of the witch is
right.
my suggestion.
Eric is leaning towards B. I'm jotting that down. Micah, where's your head on this right now?
I was going to lean a little bit more towards D.
Mm-hmm.
Just naturally inclined to go that direction.
Honestly, we could split the vote. I'll just send one of you to Orlando. That's
Send
fine.
Eric.
The other one will take. The other one will take. Oh, that's so kind, Micah. Well, I'll take lots of photos, selfies, going, "Wish you were here."
All right, so Micah, you're locking in D?
Yeah.
All right, Micah goes with D, the touch of a demon. We will find out the correct answer right after this break. It's that time again, time to thank the people who make this show possible over at patreon.com/influencepod. And I have my special guest here with you today, Amelia. Please read the folks at the producer tier, if you please, and I will critique your pronunciation as you go. Go!
M. Duran,
Mm-hmm.
Bowie Barks,
Mm-hmm.
Dominic Kerr,
Mm-hmm.
Evan,
Mm-hmm.
Jolene Julia,
Mm-hmm.
Robert help.
Tortorelli.
Tortorelli,
Yes.
Sam, and William.
She did it, folks. Thank you to everyone at any tier who subscribes over at patreon.com/influencepod. Even the free tier, you can get updates about upcoming episodes and, ad-free versions of the show and all that good stuff. Thanks again for all the supporters, and hope you're having a great summer. Now, it is time to return and see if Micah and Eric got the trivia question correct. I'm back with Micah and Eric of MuggleCast, celebrating 20 years of podcasting and fandom. There's nothing else like it on this here internet. And before we went to break, I asked them the trivia question. The Hammer of Witches is a little book, a little pamphlet that probably killed a lot of people over these many centuries. And the author of it says there are 3 things that make a witch, or that create witchcraft. And I gave them 4 things. They're looking for the made-up one. A, the evil intentions of the witch. Everyone thought that was correct. B, the help of the devil. Eric says that the help of the devil is suspicious. C, the permission of God. Everyone thinks that is on the docket. And D, the touch of a demon. Micah went with D. Again, you're looking for the made-up one. I always give guests a chance to change their answer. Micah's looking like he might want to recalibrate. What are you thinking here?
No, what drew me to that answer was the touch component. Like, something about it seems off to me.
Okay.
Like, having one of like the senses involved in this. I don't know. And as I say this, like, the thunder continues to rumble outside. So I don't know if that's a sign.
Yeah. Micah and us are in the similar part of the world, so we're getting some thunderstorms here. Hopefully we don't lose our connection or anything like that. But Eric, how about you? Are you sticking with your answer? You chose B.
I was actually having that same debate just now too, and I agree with Micah. Like, I hear exactly what that thought is exactly. And it would be funny if, like, he changed his to B and I changed mine to D. Since it would amount to the same thing. Just in case, I think I like that, my reasoning has kind of led us to one of the devil ones being maybe the one that's made up, because they're a little bit of overlap. Not to say they couldn't be in the book, in the Hammer, because people like to repeat themselves.
Well, I think you can also see that we do a literary analysis podcast, right, Matt?
Right.
Just based on how we're breaking. I love how Eric broke it down, but now I'm starting to think too. Why I like the answer D, even if it's not right at the end of the day, is like, you think they'd want to go big, right? Like, who cares about a demon? Like, the devil is the devil. Like, you have God, you need to have the devil to juxtapose him.
You can't go bigger than that.
Yeah. So I can see the merits, and if we debated this for another 5 minutes, I'd probably change to D, but I'm going to keep it B just in case.
I hope it's A or C.
Well, I am pleased to inform you that the Malleus Maleficarum asserts that 3 elements are necessary for witchcraft: the evil intentions of the witch, that is, her free will; the help of the devil, of course, the big bad; and the permission of God, which, as Eric analyzed, is God saying, hey, you have free will, you can do as you please, and if you choose to do witchcraft, you're bad news, which means the touch of a demon is the fake answer, which means Micah gets the question correct. Micah, check under your seat. There's a plane ticket to Orlando.
Oh, sweet.
No, just kidding. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I found the permission. I have a whole passage here about the permission of God, which I found fascinating, but we got to get back to the wizarding world before too long.
Eric talked me off of C, if you remember, at the start. So,
yep.
No, that's very.
Team effort.
You should use this question for a Quizage one week, Eric.
Oh, it'll be next week's Quizage. Yeah, after
great.
I'll
send it to you. I'll send you the text. Like, when you do Quizage, Amelia knows because she's a listener. I don't. Can you do
related stuff, or does it have to be like within the canon of the books and movies?
Oh,
and such?
yeah, no, we've absolutely expanded. The other one just the other week was about how a bullwhip works. So yeah, we're absolutely ready
Great.
to. At this point, again, bottom of the barrel, we're really sifting
it's
through.
it's pub trivia. It's bar trivia.
It's pub
not
trivia.
necessarily...
Well, that's it was a deliberate intention, because the last time we went through book 5 and book 6, Quizzitch was exclusively about a question from the upcoming chapter. It was like a way to incentivize listeners for reading the chapter and retaining it. This time, I'm not doing that because, one, I don't want to look to see if I'm asking the same question, which 9 times out of 10, I'll be like, what's fascinating to me 5 years ago? The same question that's fascinating to me now. It never changes. Mm-hmm. We just did this book recently. So anyway, now the trivia questions are more general knowledge, and I'm encouraging people. The goal is to get people to stretch and learn some things that are outside of the books, so adjacent, tangential. This question absolutely fits.
Please grab it. I'll send you the links and the sources. This is a very weird question that only content creators might relate to, and I find it really funny and stupid. Do you ever Google something and you're like, oh, what is this? I gotta figure it out. I'm doing research. And you Google something and you see a link and you're like, oh, this link has the answer. And you click on it and you are the person who wrote that article. And you're searching for something, for information you don't know, and you are the person from the past who's like, "Yep, this is it." And you're like, "What is happening?" Like, do you ever search for Harry Potter trivia and then you end up on MuggleNet and you're like, "Oh, I did this." You must
not
have
trivia,
had that,
but
right?
yeah, not trivia, but this has happened to me, I think, twice on old MuggleNet articles that I forgot about writing. One was a summary of the Wonderland article, which was where it was suggested that Hermione and Ron wouldn't have a perfectly happy marriage. And there was stuff relating to that because it was a huge controversy. And I'm trying to remember what the other one was. It was like, there's a segment on MuggleNet currently called the Department of Mysteries, which debunks myths. And one of the old articles that I wrote for that came up recently. But no, it's an odd feeling to be like, oh, weird? I forgot this. I should have
forgot.
known.
I knew this. Yeah.
All
right. So we can't cover this fandom and your 20-year career without discussing the challenging topic of J.K. Rowling's transphobic views that have come out over the latter half of your time covering this fandom. And there are people in the fandom and people listening, I know for sure, who are so upset about that they have made the difficult decision to separate themselves from the fandom, or to no longer purchase the books or buy the movies or play the video games. And I respect that. I understand that. And you have reckoned with this on the show a variety of times. So, like, how do you manage that? Like, what do you do with that? And has it evolved over time?
It's an ever-evolving topic for sure. We recently talked about this like a month ago on one of our episodes as the whole topic, because it is ever-changing. The situation is dire. And it's difficult. Right. It's absolutely difficult. And I think that what we've done, and it's so perplexing too, because the books themselves, right, are so pure, hopeful, inclusive. Yeah. The messages, it kind of caught us off guard about 5 years ago, honestly, because while there had been one or two potentially problematic things or alarming things that the author had done, nothing quite happened to the level and of what this essentially is. And it's been difficult to navigate. And I think I completely understand as well people that are packing up and not involving ourselves, because in reality that's the only way to make sure that you're not supporting a cause that is hurting people that you see as people. And some people don't have those qualms, but those who do, I completely understand the decision to be safe. And fortunately, there are other hopeful fantasy books and other things too. Like my TBR pile is eons long. But something about Potter and what we've managed to do on the show keeps me a part of it. And that is, I think, finding that space where the messages of the books, particularly book 5 we're reading right now, totally anti-fascist, completely instructively anti-fascist.
Yes.
And relevant.
Yes.
Topically relevant to the era in which we're talking about it. And it's for reasons like that I think continuing to be a voice in this fandom and for us to continue doing what we're doing is really useful. Not just for ourselves, but for an audience that still supports and listens to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I find to be almost fascinating in a way is if you would have asked any of us 10, 15, 20 years ago, who would be most like to have as a guest on our podcast? The answer undoubtedly would have been J.K. Rowling. Now, I don't think that there's any co-host that would want to have her on the podcast. And it's sad in a way because
it really is. Yeah.
The person who we thought we knew who wrote these books is now indistinguishable from the author that wrote Harry Potter, at least in our eyes. And going off of what Eric was saying, you know, if you just glance at her X feed, it's not just making statements, it's doubling, tripling, quadrupling down.
It's malice. It's malice. She's
And
gleeful about cruelty, and this is not the same person.
And I haven't looked at recent things, so I can't. I don't want to, but that's unfortunate.
It is hard though. I think at times because people will say, you know, how are you able to distinguish the story from the author, right? How do you create that separation? And the best way to try to explain it is, yes, she is responsible for writing the Harry Potter series, but she's not responsible for creating the fan community.
Right.
That lies with the fans, and that is probably the best way to answer that sort of question. And two, on these topics, right? I'm certainly not an expert. We've brought people onto the show who are experts in this space or who are being directly impacted by her rhetoric. And so to be able to, you know, almost in a way educate our listeners, that's where we feel we can have the biggest impact, right? We're not going to spend every episode talking about this. We recognize that we have a vast audience, lots of different opinions, lots of different backgrounds. And at the end of the day, they're looking for us to get together and talk about Harry Potter, to do the literary analysis, to criticize the films, you know, the casting and all that. But there is a place for us when the time is appropriate to address what the author is doing, because it's news, but it's also impacting a number of our listeners in a very harmful way. And you know, it's been a tough kind of rope to walk.
It's something Micah said too that I want to, you know, bring up again is that it is that voice from within the fandom that we like position ourselves as, is because, like, you know, if we close MuggleCast tomorrow, we miss an opportunity to speak to this group of people. And it's not just us. Like, there are few podcasts that have been around as long as we have, that have the audience that we have. And these are people who have they get the same thing out of the Harry Potter books that we do. Right. And there are people, and there are fandom, and there are, you know, we are all the same. And to not speak to that audience anymore would be sad. I think, and it would be a missed opportunity to continue to analyze the ways in which the books are, for instance, anti-fascist, and we are still finding, I think, messages that resonate from in these books. And this is 20 years after it came out, or 22 years after it came out. So it's so many things all at once, but the decision made, many years ago now, to still be a voice in the fandom I think was the right call for us, and remains to be. And this way we can keep an eye on how bad things become and bring it up when it becomes necessary as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Really, to wrap up, you're alluding to my final question here, which is like, I'm so fascinated by the biggest literary and film franchises that we can think of. The Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Harry Potter. All of them are about, hey, maybe psychopathic, fascistic, racially motivated people shouldn't be taking control of our society. We are all rebels and freedom fighters in our fiction, and yet here we are in our current, at least in the U.S., our current political climate. So, as you both alluded, we need this fiction more than ever. But I don't know, what does it mean to you guys and to the fandom in our current times? You've alluded to it, Eric, but I don't know if there's more to say.
There's that whole saying of like, 1984 was a cautionary tale. It wasn't an instruction booklet, but now, it seems like we're there. It's like in Handmaid's Tale, right?
Yes. Right.
These were not instruction booklets. They're being read, I think, by some as some, and it's harrowing. I think the reason, if I could point to one thing, that maybe facilitated or helped the sliding into an actual sort of, I want to say dystopia.
Yeah.
Because I think that might be a charitable way of talking about current era as being not too dissimilar from something like Divergent or Hunger Games. We're really close to Hunger Games, by the way. And it's the series I've read a lot.
Well,
but
yeah.
I think that partly because we've had so many dystopian novels and things that, young adult fiction the last 20 years, so much of it dystopian, I think we've actually, apart from finding lessons in it and hope and that kind of thing, watching the bad guys get theirs and watching the heroes, the rebels, the freedom fighters overcome, I think we actually numbed ourselves to it.
I think you're onto something. Yeah.
I think that part of us wants to live in Panem, not because living in Panem is great, but because our friends are there. And that's a problem, because we weren't alert enough to say, even though Peeta and Katniss would be great to have as our neighbors, it means so much suffering in the world gets right. So I think in general, movies since 1984, Terminator, is a great film, by the way. And again, warning about the perils of nuclear war and mankind and the way we hand tasks over to computers and all that stuff, relevant today, but is always talking about this fundamental, will the world end or not? And they thought it was going to end in 1997. We've managed to live a little past that. Star Trek said the mid-90s as well.
Yeah.
We're still working on it.
It's always 30 years away, 40 years away.
That's a good point.
It's one generation away. Like, my children's generation, they're going to have a tough time because the world's
I never thought of it
crazy.
like that, and that is brilliant, actually. That's kind of blowing my mind.
Maybe that's part of it.
But yeah, I think we're actually there now in certain, depending on how you measure it. But I think that apart from being enthralled by these post-apocalyptic, works, I think we've numbed ourselves to it, and we weren't quick enough on the gas going, no, we don't actually want the Hunger Games. No, we don't actually want Handmaid's Tale. So I think that's just my take on it.
Yeah. Yep.
It's interesting because we did an episode of MuggleCast way back in 2008 called Potter Politics. And we discussed things, directly from the books, but that had these themes of racism, ethnic cleansing, Nazism, corruption, biased media, all the educational reform that Umbridge implements during her time at Hogwarts.
Yes, indeed.
And we're here in 2025 and we're saying, you know what? A lot of that is still applicable today, especially as we're going through this reread of the fifth book.
Yeah.
It couldn't be more timely. And I actually really like what Eric said about, it's almost like we've numbed ourselves to the resistance side of things, the reform side of things, I'm just hopeful that, we can take some of these lessons that are from all these different series and be able to apply them, into present day society. And maybe it's not us that really need to read these books. I think it's other people that need to, maybe spend some time learning the lessons of what these series have to offer.
Yeah, that's well said.
There is hope. There's hope is what I'll say as a cap to that. And one of the things, whenever I'm down recently, that I'll go do is see something really creative, whether it's theater, whether it's a music concert, whether it's anything. And it always rights my energy. It always rights my levels. Seeing somebody be creative at anything, whether it's a YouTube video that I'm really blown away by the editing of, like Amelia Potter in the 7-book summary, 7-movie summary, just to throw one out. Seeing creative stuff recharges my battery and recharges my hopeometer. You could have the worst legislation ever written pass, and I will watch a creative video and go, you know what? There's hope in the world, because that is something, our voice, our creative voice, the freedom in which the world that was built that gave us the freedom to, as teenagers, start this website, fan site, podcast thing, and continue to travel the world and continue to build it and make it our own. Those freedoms that we've had to explore, to look inward, to look at the books, to learn about ourselves, to learn about each other. God, that world's not gone. It's not going away even, but but we have to defend it. We have to remember what was important about it. And also, because we're really bad at this, humans are bad at a couple of things. And one of it is like long-term strategic planning and things, and also looking ahead for things that don't affect us, but will affect our children. Yes. When you're a parent, you start to do that. But people who aren't parents yet, or who will never be parents, have to do that too. Think of the children, think of the next generation. What kind of world are they going to inherit? And I think our generation does this really well, because we were always the ones saying, hey, leave the world better than you found it. And so as long as we can just stick to that, if there's, we just keep getting the momentum going. And I think that's the way to go. But yeah, that's where I find hope.
I love it. Well, our air conditioner's on the fritz. We are roasting to death here. We've kept Micah and Eric long enough, but before we let you go, if you're a Harry Potter fan, subscribe to MuggleCast. If you don't already, I'm sure a lot of listeners already do. Where can people find you specifically online? Are there any social media handles or websites you want to share here before we get out of here?
I want to say we also do a pop culture podcast called What the Hype. And that is mostly on YouTube. Yes,
Amelia's a fan of that, yes.
It's Micah and me and Pam and Laura, who people will know. And it's a really great time. We do want to pimp that for sure. My socials just recently went to private because of everything, so you can't find me. But you could try. If you slip me a friend request, I'll accept it. But yeah, so it's just a privacy thing. But that's MuggleCast for sure. It's a good way to locate, to find.
Yeah, great. I would just echo that. MuggleCast pretty much on all social platforms, and then MuggleCast.com is the site.
Perfect. Well, we will link to all of those places in the doobly-doo. Eric and Micah, thank you so much for being my guest. Amelia back there, thanks for being the co-pilot here, for making this all happen. And 20 more years. Here's to 20 more years.
I think
sounds good.
Honestly, the hard part was the last 20 years. Now it's easy.
It's smooth sailing from here on.
We got a TV show coming, just one episode per week for 10 weeks.
There you
go.
We're
good the rest of the year. Coast to coast, coast to coast. Season 2. It's going to be great.